Hello, I'm Te Radar. Why don't you come and see my comedy show, Eating the Dog?
Hello, my name's Te Radar, and today I am cooking beef schnitzel for Cooking for Change. It's my mother's recipe, although I'm using oil and not dripping. She used dripping. What a great cooking medium that was. My enduring memory of my childhood is meat, and everything to do with meat. And we always knew where our meat came from, often because it was my job to shoe the beast into the paddock that would then become the meat that was served up on our plate. And so we always had this relationship with meat. You knew where your food came from. And I do remember distinctly once, because it was always a strange process choosing which particular beast looked best for the freezer, and we'd gone to all the effort of shoeing a beast up, and we'd locked it in the paddock, and we were about to go on a family holiday, and I remember looking out, and halfway down the farm I could see this beast running all the way back to where it had come from, and I thought, well, this is a disaster, because the home kill guy was due to turn up, and the last thing you want is some kind of adrenalized, nervous, just run 2 miles kind of animal that's going to get shot and put in the freezer. That is essentially what happened, and for about 6 months we had some very, very tough meat. But there is that relationship with animals, I think, that you don't get these days when you go to the supermarket. They do their utmost to make sure that you as a consumer don't relate what you see in a meat chiller to an actual animal, and I think that disconnect, I think it's detrimental on a number of levels, both ethically and taste-wise, actually. Oxtail, that was one of those. It was one of those dishes where it's very limited. I mean, you know, a cow or a steer, they only have one tail, and it's only really so long in its usable nature, which means that there's not a lot of it. And fortunately, my mother and I were really the only people that liked oxtail, and it is one of the great cuts, you know, slow cooked, and all of those the sinews and tendons and the connective tissue. That is a great dish. That still remains, and it actually now reminds me I should probably do it more often. It still remains one of my all-time favourite dishes. I was Radar as a university nickname down at Otago. They had one every year at a place called Selwyn College, which was a hall of residence, and I've met others, and so I was a Radar because I'm an Andrew, and in the early 70s there was a lot of Andrews christened, and so no one could figure out which Andrew was Andrew, so we all had nicknames. So Radar stuck. Then I started doing comedy, and by the time I realised I was doing comedy, it was too late to go back to being Andrew Lumsden, because who's that guy? And then I was on tour with Mike King, and we thought it would be hilarious, because I was doing a mihi at the start of the show to open for him, to put Te in front of Radar, hence Te Radar. And now what we say is we took the H out of the and we gave it to Whanganui, and everything is right with the language. It was a joke, and I was selling Ngāti Pākehā t-shirts at the time, and so we just thought it would be a very funny thing to do. And then here we are, 15 years later. I've received, since becoming Te Radar, quite a lot of Māori funding, done a lot of stuff on Māori television. No amount of Māori in me, none, just a very useful brand. Singly one of the most important things about food is sharing it with people, is having people around, and that sense of family and community that you can only get when you sit down and you eat a meal together. And it's a very special thing, and we live in a world now where I read a thing where in America you could sit down and people may not even eat the same meal. They'll go to the fridge and someone will get out a pasta, and someone else will get something else, and they'll put it in the microwave to prepare food and to eat food and to share food. You know, that goes back to before we even invented fire. It's a wonderful, wonderful pleasure. At the moment, generally, I'm doing most of the cooking, and for the last probably a little while, we've been eating a lot of lamb mince. And little lamb mince meatballs. I can't get enough of lamb mince. Lamb mince meatballs and pasta, lamb mince burgers. I cannot tire of lamb mince. I don't know why. It's not something that I ate a lot of prior to about 6 months ago, and now it would be a couple of times a week. Lamb mince. I love it. Baked. It was one of the great transitional moments in my life when I was at a restaurant that served only meatballs. How great is Auckland? And I said, how do you make your meatballs so moist? And they said, we bake them. And I went, oh my God, why has no one ever told me this? So from then on, never a dry meatball, particularly with lamb mince.